Welcome everyone and say thank you for being here. By show of hands, who was in Treasure Island for last year's storm events? Okay, so y'all kind of know what we're talking about. I've been here 7 years and we've gotten up here. This is the seventh year, and we preach the same thing: preparedness, be ready to evacuate, have a plan, know your plan, execute your plan. And I got to be honest, it's kind of fallen on deaf ears many years. So, told you so. No, not to make light of it. It's we got whacked 3 times last year: Debbie, Helene, and Milton. And sad to say, with Hurricane Helene, we probably had a 30% evacuation rate for the mandatory evacuation, even though all the experts were telling us we were going to get 7 feet of water over the freeboard, right? And it came to pass. It happened. I am proud to say we had almost 100% evacuation for Milton. So, yeah, we're trainable, right? Right? And the sad part is a lot of folks rode out Helene standing in their living rooms on their coffee tables in chest-deep water. I can't tell you how heartbreaking it was to come back over the causeway just before first light the morning after Helene, and to see people carrying their kids, a few belongings, some of them no shoes, no shirts, clearly had been soaking wet, looked like hell. They'd been through it, and just trying to get off the island because they chose not to evacuate. Hopefully we can learn from that and heed that lesson. The number one thing you'll hear today is, when ordered to evacuate, do so. But have a plan. We're going to talk to you all about a plan. All these folks back here have stuff for you. Build your hurricane kit. Run from the water, hide from the wind. You'll hear that a lot. Don't worry about your possessions. They're replaceable. We will protect those to the best of our ability. But protect yourself. Save your life. If you got a good friend out on the mainland that's outside the evacuation zone, make plans to stay at their house. Pinellas County is here. Their emergency management is here. They can talk to you about sheltering, and they'll tell you, it's a lifeboat, not a cruise ship. Great place to go if you have nowhere else to go. Definitely get out of harm's way, but it's not going to be pleasant, but it'll be better than standing in chest deep water. I can guarantee you that. So, make a plan, get prepared, put together hurricane kits, and hopefully tonight will be very informative and we can all learn something. We've got excellent guests. We got Mike Clay, Chief Meteorologist at Spectrum Bay News 9, rock star, coming to visit every year. Yep. He's going to talk to us a little bit about what to expect this year's forecast. Captain Dan Savarese is going to talk to you about island security, what happens during an evacuation, how we protect your property while you're gone, and just generally what the law enforcement role is during a disaster. So my Deputy Chief Tom Brennan is back here in the back. He's gonna fill my role since I'm otherwise occupied with the city manager stuff, and you laugh, I laugh too. And he is going to tell us all about the fire department's role in emergency management and how we're here to serve our citizens during these times of disaster. So without further ado, I will introduce the next guest, who is Captain Savarese.
Thank you, Chief. For those who don't know me, my name's Dan Savarese. I'm the captain of the police department. I've been here almost 20 years. I'm a behind the scenes kind of guy. I'm usually not out in front, but I'm happy to be here tonight. So I'm Chief Barkley's second in command, and he couldn't be here tonight. He's driving back from Tallahassee for legislative meetings. I've been through several storms, and I don't want to rehash. The Chief Bar's said it pretty well. Never seen anything like that. Never thought I'd see anything like that in our city. You all know we lost the police department, fire department, so hope we never see that again. I know Chief Barkley's spoken on this a few times about some of the steps we took to protect your property when people were evacuating. We brought in outside resources when we did that really quick, and we got a lot of police departments from like the Palm Beach area that came over. They were more than willing to come and help us, and those that had experience with storms. And we basically told these officers to drive around the islands, and I'm sure everybody here saw them. I mean, we saturated this island as much as we could, including our officers, and we had them all on 12-hour rotating. I mean, I tried to give everybody a day off, like at least every 2 weeks. I know I was working, and the chief were working just as long as them. And it's a team effort with the fire department and the city, but if police and fire in the city are tandem. I mean, hand in hand, and we do everything that we can to work together. And I know I speak for the chief and deputy chief Brennan that's important to us. It's important to me, and it really worked during the storms. So we tried to protect your property as much as we could. There were a couple things that happened, but for the most part, I'd say 95% successful, which is pretty good. And a lot of questions came up about stealing stuff from the curb, and is that looting and stuff. It's terrible when we saw people taking your property from the curb, but technically it's not looting. And we would educate people and say, listen, they're in the house. This is not really good. You shouldn't be doing this. And some of them listened and some of them didn't. But again, we saturated, and I think we talked to almost every person that we saw doing that. But we've talked about this a lot. I can answer any questions anybody has, unless we want to let. Yes, thank you. Bridge checkpoints, and you all experienced that coming in. So Treasure Island PD is in charge of the Causeway checkpoint. That is the only checkpoint that we man because it's the only external bridge that's coming into Treasure Island. Blinds Pass Bridge and Johns Pass Bridge are internal bridges, so we don't man those because they're being checked at other points up the beach and down the beach. So I know there's a lot of questions about the barrier reentry pass and stuff. Treasure Island will check your driver's license. Okay, I know you're getting different information from the county and the sheriff, and I've told the sheriff that we're going to continue to check driver's licenses. If you have the barrier reentry pass, that's perfectly fine, but carry your driver's license if you want to get back in. Something that shows your address on your driver's license. So make sure that's current. Registration is good too, but something with a photo ID that we can see. I'm happy to say that we did another FDOT campaign this past 8 months, and we won our own message board sign for the police department. So you're gonna, at no cost to the city. So we're gonna be utilizing that. Hopefully not for another storm, but you'll see it. But we'll put stuff like that up. That driver's licenses are good for checkpoints. And just, heed the evacuation warnings. The chief said it well. If it's coming down and it's everybody's saying the same thing, just pay attention to that, please, because none of us want to go through that again. So, does anybody have any questions for me while I'm up here? Yes, sir. That's a very good question. And that happened a few times during this. So the question was if a family member who doesn't live in Treasure Island needs to come in and help a family member who lives in Treasure Island, but they don't have anything to get them in, how do they go about that? We had that happen a couple times. So my suggestion is to call ahead or come to the checkpoint, and you can talk to one of the officers there. And typically that would go up to the sergeant or even me, and I would say, yes, they can come in. So we did have that happen a few times. So the communication between the officers at the checkpoint and the supervisors is usually pretty fluid. So that's the way I would handle it. Yes, ma'am. And that's fine too. Correct. And you can still use the barrier reentry. Here's the thing about the barrier reentry. It's not assigned to one person. So they were passing this around between contractors and stuff. So we took it upon ourselves as your police department to kind of do it a little bit harder, I guess, is the way I would say it. A little more strict. And it worked well. And I didn't hear much complaints over that, so.
Yeah, one of the lessons learned when we talked to our counterparts in Sanibel and
Was it going? Okay, sorry.
Yeah, in Sanibel and down in Fort Myers Beach, following their devastating storms, was that these passes were being passed off to unscrupulous contractors who were coming in and doing work on your house one day and then coming back the next and robbing your house, burglarizing your house, and using the pass to get on. So we felt that it was better to step it up and be a little more stringent for your protection. Another thing I would tell you too, if you've got an elderly person that you care about, you should probably help them evacuate the island as opposed to helping them, come back and helping them the day after the storm. So that would be my first suggestion. Any other questions?
Yes, in the back. I believe through the sheriff's office you can get that. She lost her pass. I believe through the sheriff's office you can get your pass. I can find that out and get back to you. I can check when I'm done here and find out. Anybody else? Yes.
I do know that they do need to be removed from the floodplain. That's part of the agreement. The FEMA let us put them out here in the first place. They have to be removed during a storm, expected storm. I'm sorry. Do mobile homes or trailers that are normally not allowed to be lived in on the island, they're permitted during recovery times because, obviously FEMA has trailers that they provide for folks whose homes are uninhabitable. But the part of that agreement is they do need to be removed from the island. And the question was, do we know where we can go, where you can go with those? And I would suggest making arrangements ahead of time, maybe a travel trailer park that's inland, or, even put them in a storage lot. Perhaps emergency management would have some information. Once we go under a watch, I would suggest moving, your trailers, and FEMA will let us know through the county when it's time to move the county-owned property. All the best place for all that information is, and we preach it over and over. Don't use Facebook. Don't use social media. Don't ask your neighbors. Call the Citizens Information Line. The county has the most updated. It's staffed. Once we go under a disaster watch, it's staffed, and those folks have the latest information, which you can call in the morning and get different information in the afternoon because it's a fluid, dynamic situation, right? So the best way to stay informed is not through social media, but Citizens Information Line, and that number is 727-464-4333. 727-464-4333. And that's what our public information officer uses to get his intel that we put out. So check the city's sites, call the county information citizens hotline, and reach out to official sources, because I can tell you there was some pretty crazy stuff out there. Like, we got a bunch of calls. When are you blocking the drawbridges up?
Yep, we do
Well,
not
why would you
raise
put
the
a drawbridge, that
That is
weighs 7 tons and it's metal?
We get asked
It's a
that
metal
question.
sail. Why would you put it up in a hurricane force winds? You would not do that.
I can't tell you how many.
When
Times we
we
got asked that
report that
question.
the drawbridges are closed down, they are locked in the down position. They're closed to boat traffic. So Absolutely. The phone number for the Citizens Information Line, 727-464-4333. Yes, ma'am. You talk to people. It's like a phone bank that's staffed. Yep. And they get briefed at the beginning of every shift. If there's hot new information off the presses, I imagine somebody walks in and says, "New script," slaps it on the desk. So, anything else? Those are volunteers and county staff. And it's located right in the County Emergency Operations Center, so they are getting the best information to you. Anything else? And there'll be time for questions later. Who's next on the agenda? Is it Mike? All right, here we are. Ladies and gentlemen, Mike Clay.
Thank you. Tomatoes being thrown? No, okay, good. Whew, I was scared. I think I've lost count how many years I've come here and talked to you folks at the beginning. And you're the ones, we do a lot of talks, but you're the ones that always invite me back every year. And unexpectedly, you invited me back again this year after what happened last year. So how about that? But the morning after Helene, actually when Helene was hitting, you guys broke my heart because I was sitting there and I was watching the tidal gauge at Clearwater Beach, and it showed a level that was complete inundation for Clearwater Beach, and all of a sudden it hit me. Treasure Island. Oh no. Oh no. It was happening and broke my heart. So I'm glad to see all of you here, and I'm glad that we've recovered the way we have. I want to talk, echoing social media, Facebook, terrible. I follow Meteorologist in the plains. I get posts on tornadoes 5 days later. It's just so delayed. I'm not here to promote Elon, but Twitter, X, it's a little bit more current, and we'll show you some of the posts we had. So this is where it all started. This was September 19th, so about a week away. And we have 3 levels. Yellow we call a banana, orange we call an orange, and red we call a cherry. And so we'll sit in the Weather Center and go, oh, we got a cherry. You'll see a cherry in a minute. Tropical weather outlook. This is on our website. Go to our website under Tropical Update, and at the top you'll see 3 images. And we control those images, and we control the annotation right there. We type that in ourselves. So we can give you a little bit more information because it's a human typing that in and not just a generic 60% chance of development. We'll try to say a little bit more with that. We can control that. So that's on our website. We'll also put it out, this one out on X. I look back at the analytics of some of our posts before Helene, and it was crickets. It's like, hello, y'all. Milton, of course, was off the chart. So here we are. This is the 23rd, and we got a cherry down here. This is developing in the Central American Gyre. That's what got us. CAG, right in here, just sat there, and it formed Helene and Milton. Milton formed over here. And the gyre sat there and produced, we saw this in 2005 with some hurricanes there too. And this was now an invest, and it looked like it was coming up into the Gulf. So here we go. We've got a tropical storm. Notice the center, and notice how far the convection goes way off to the east of the center, almost to the edge of Cuba and back to Jamaica. So we've got a lopsided system. It's a tropical storm, and there's the cone right up the west coast of Florida as a major hurricane. This was the storm surge potential map we put out. Now, we do this by hand. We look at all of the information. We look at all of the computer models. We also use a independent company called QRisk, and they do their own storm surge, and the Hurricane Center does their own storm surge, and then we look at both of them and compare them, and, you know, like they taught me in meteorology school, when all the models say the same thing, you better go with the models. So QRisk and the Hurricane Center, the storm surge numbers were the same. Uh-oh, we got a problem. So 4 to 8 up our coast, and then this was a devastating storm surge that we probably never talked enough about, but that was just incredible up through the Nature Coast. So 4 to 8, I don't know many people that got a 4. A lot of areas got a 6, and there were some up into Tampa Bay that got a 7-foot storm surge. People ask me, why was this one different? What happened to this one when others like Idalia and all the storms we've had over the years? I got 2 things there. First is the enormous size of the wind field with Helene. There's the hurricane right there. The wind field was tremendous, so we had a tremendous fetch onto our coast, and the models saw that, and the models were saying you're going to get 4 to 8 foot of storm surge all the way up into Tampa Bay. The thing that surprised me was how late in the night the surge came all the way up into Tampa Bay, up towards Feather Sound. 1 a.m. Took all that time, and then the surge came barreling in past Shore Acres and up into Feather Sound. Of course, you guys on the beaches were getting it in the afternoon. So again, there's a good look at this. Now, I don't know, and we can talk about this. Were people watching the cone and thinking we were okay? I know a lot of people just look at their cell phone and they just look at the cone. The cone was stretched because it was moving so fast. So as I've said in these talks before, here's how you do it. You go, okay, here's where it is now. Here's where I think it's going to be in 12 hours. Here's where I think it's going to be in 24 hours. Then the computer draws a cone. If the 12 and 24 are like this, then the cone is fatter. The cone is not a forecast cone. It's an average error cone at that location at those points. So because this thing was moving so fast, and gosh, we can't even talk about what happened in North Carolina. We don't have that much time. But because it was moving so fast, the cone was stretched, and I think it took a lot of people by surprise. But look at the tropical storm force winds. There's the west coast of Florida. Chance of tropical storm force winds. That is enormous. So compare that to the cone, and you can see the impacts were enormous all the way into the peninsula. By the way, there might be some refinement to these graphics coming up in the coming years to make them more high resolution. So we'll see. All right, here's a radar loop from our radar, our C-band radar in Pinellas Park. Couple of things I want you to watch. This is 1 p.m. Here's the eye. When I play this, first of all, notice how the eye passes us by and it becomes better and better to find all the way up until landfall. Also notice when I play this, there's going to be storms offshore. That was the second part, and I think that really got us. Those cells offshore were moving at 100 miles an hour, right up along the coast. 100 miles an hour. Imagine a storm moving 100 miles an hour with no stop signs. Okay? That's when our surge really started coming in. And people have told me, even storm surge experts have told me they were surprised at how violent the surge was on our coast. Most of the time, a storm surge event around here is like watching golf on TV. This was violent. The waves were enormous. The wave action was extremely powerful. I think those cells, which started here and moved by during the afternoon, moving at 100 miles an hour, stirred up the Gulf in levels that we hadn't really seen before. All right, so I'm going to play the loop here. Watch the loop. Watch the storms offshore. Watch the eye. There they go. 100-mile-an-hour cells right there. That's about the time we started having problems. Look at the eye, getting better and better defined. So we did not have a storm that was weakening offshore. We had a storm that was strengthening rapidly. Look at the eye now. Look at the lightning in the eye. And, of course, that's when we lost connectivity. And then we knew we were in trouble then. This was the last picture from our Madeira Beach camera before it failed. And look at the winds. And I said on the air, oh my gosh, this is bad. I think this was about 8 p.m. because I saw the run up through the dunes. These dunes are all gone. but I saw the run up through the dunes here, and I saw how big the waves were, and I said, this is really bad. Never seen that before. These were the official surges. Poor Cedar Key, they had the worst surge on record, 6.89 feet the year before. So they broke that with 9.3 feet with Helene. Clearwater Beach, St. Pete in the bay, there's your 7-foot East Bay, and there's your 7 foot, and then 5 feet all the way down to Fort Myers. So, you all know what happened with Helene. Then a few weeks later, we had this baby come by. It formed again from the Central American Gyre, sitting right in here, and it developed very quickly, literally within a few hours. Luckily, the computer models did a pretty good job of seeing that. And of course, we're right in the cone. So, we started talking about it.
And consistent on is you really have to pay attention to where you're at, what your elevation is. Are you evacuation A? Are you evacuation B? Are you evacuation C? What's your level like? Where are you approximately at? Because you need to get out of the evacuation areas. But the reason this is a big deal is we've said numerous times over the years, it doesn't mean you have to go 500 miles away. You might only have to go 4 miles away.
So again, with these, we draw by hand, and the computer models, the H models they call them, they're really good these days, and the models from our vendors, we have 2 vendors, Barron and the Weather Company, they were all showing that the worst part of the storm was going to be on the north side, not with the traditional right around the eye. The worst part of the storm was going to be on the north side. Here's an example, and again, we draw these by hand. Kyle drew this graphic, and I think we did a really good job here of illustrating the inland penetration of the eye winds coming in like so. So we don't just rely on the automated forecast numbers. We look at everything and we draw those by hand.
It's also why the core of those strongest winds are basically going to be like this. They're going to bulge eastward.
Which is what happened. Well, this did not happen, thank goodness. This was the official forecast. This is why the evacuations were ordered. This was the forecast. We probably wouldn't be here right now if this had happened. But of course, we started to see the trends in the models taking the eye south of us. Thank goodness. And what a beast this was. Look at this. This is a visible satellite, but it had already peaked. It was a Category 5 that morning. It was coming down fast. It was being ripped apart by wind shear. Tornado outbreak. These are lightning flashes. There's the eye. Once it's been a Category 5, it's still something you got to reckon with. There's one thing I didn't realize that I realized later, a lot of people don't understand rapid intensification and they don't understand rapid weakening. So a lot of people were freaking out because it was a Category 5 that morning and we were saying, no, 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 it is going to weaken rapidly as it comes in. And we were even saying this is probably too high, probably a 3 as it comes in. And here's the radar loop from our radar. And a couple of things to watch. First of all, watch the tornado outbreak. You'll see the polygons over here. If that hurricane had been further offshore, the tornado outbreak that was here would have been here on top of us. The other thing to watch as it comes in, watch the eye be ripped apart by the strong upper level winds, and then watch what happens on the north side of the eye, how that incredible area of heavy rain sat over Pinellas County. So watch Pinellas County and watch as the eye comes in. Tornado outbreak on the east side. Here it comes. There's the eye just coming on screen. Tornado outbreak underway, like we've really never seen in Florida before on the east side. There comes the eye. It's ripped apart, drying on the back side. But look what sets up right on top of us. Exactly what the computer model said was going to happen. Look at the persistence of that incredible rain over Pinellas and Hillsborough counties. There are some places in Pasco that still have flood, and it changed the course of the Withlacoochee River. So we go over to a flash flood emergency. The backside was really violent with that north wind, but thankfully it pushed the water out of the bay. This was at 9 in the morning. I was trying to lay down and take a nap because I knew it was going to be a long day, and I tweeted this when this came through. I couldn't sleep because it was so loud outside and it was all rain, just loud rain. So I was like, might as well go to work. 2:30 in the afternoon, the first flash flood warning for Pinellas County. Our radar is right there, and we call this the beam is saturated. There is incredible rain right on top of all of Pinellas County, right through here, including out here at the beaches. The rain was just amazing. So we had to do something we plan every year to evacuate to our Orlando station if we have to. We weren't worried about having to leave because of storm surge. We were worried about the sewer plant. We were worried about having 100 people in the TV station without a potty. So we sent probably 60% of our staff to Orlando. Kyle was in Orlando, at our station in Orlando. We rehearse this every year, but we never rehearse this, having to switch back and forth. We always figure, well, if we go to Orlando, we're staying in Orlando. But we needed both here and Orlando. So this was on Bay News 9. Kyle's in Orlando. I'm here. And we never rehearsed this.
Of course, I'm joined by Chief Meteorologist Mike Clay, once again, keeping a close eye on everything out there. And it looks like you have maybe an image of frontal cloud or the tornado perhaps familiar?
Look at this. This is crazy. And I know you have a lot of people listening on the radio, so I have to describe this. But this is a picture we just got in. This is from Evans in Lake Placid, showing a large Plains State-like tornado across central portions of Polk County in a short time. There it is again. So, as things went on during the evening,
In Pinellas County, we're getting some of our best video of the night here. Let's show you, this is right outside our studios. Look at that rain.
and this is a Cat 1, probably. Cat 1.
It's going sideways.
Both sides, every which way. And you can see the water rippling there in the wind, and wow, that is, they got 3/4 winds right there.
And one of the things that I'm noticing.
So, it was a hurricane, but
One
could be worse. And so we're putting out, we know a lot of people have lost power. Maybe they can't see us. But we're trying to put out a lot. 93 at SRQ just came in, 93 mile an hour gust at SRQ. They later went calm when the eye went over. Making landfall now, right over Sarasota. But look at that. I don't know if you can tell, but that's Pinellas. And look at that band right there, right in the worst spot. And the rain, of course, was very heavy. Flash flood, not a flash flood warning, a flash flood emergency. St. Pete, 16 inches, 5 inches in 1 hour. Sometimes short and sweet. So I've been doing this a long time, since 1986. I think this is the first time I've ever really had breaking news that I've ever been able to deliver. And this was as big as it gets. This is changing for our community. And Brian showed it to me, and I stepped over and got on the air.
Oh, so let's go over to
Watch Holly's face.
first images in of that.
Whoop.
We're getting our first.
Went back one.
Oh, so let's go over to Mike Clay now. So this is the flash flood emergency that we're in, Mike, and we're seeing the result of that.
Guys, we're just finding out the roof has come off part of Tropicana Field.
Wow.
Yeah, we have several of the panels has come off, and you know that was housing first responders.
Yes.
So a huge chunk of the roof of Tropicana Field has come off. Also, a crane on Central has collapsed.
They were afraid of that.
The mayor mentioned that. Yeah. And so goodness knows what's going on in downtown St. Pete. We have wind gusts over 100 miles an hour. You do this long enough, and eventually a big story drops into your lap.
First images in of that. Yeah, here we are. This is it. Bill Carl Johnson is who shot this. Or we're watching it live with, first time we've seen it, video, but we're watching it with you for the first time
And
here.
if you're listening to us on the radio, we're showing you a distance shot, and it looks like about, 2 panels? You can actually see inside the Tropicana Field and see the lights on the side. So, the rainfall was incredible on the north side, not so much on the south side. But, you know, these folks got hit with Debbie with that 20 inches of rain down here, so they needed a break. Incredible totals. And look at the winds. There's the center. This is where the center went, but look how the highest winds were displaced well to the north, 97 Tampa. 102 in St. Pete. Those were the gusts. The rainfall, there's the center. And you can see, once again, it's not like we would expect. Center south, dry. Ian did this too. North, and especially in Pinellas County, the incredible rainfall. The storm surge, thank goodness, 1 foot. We had a north wind and we had a negative surge. Okay, so let's talk about, in the time we have left, what happened and what we can learn from. For those of you who evacuated, my question is, what prompted you to evacuate for Helene? Was there anything that was said or done or could be done differently that would prompt you to go, you know what, it's time to get out? For something like Helene, when it's way offshore and the cone is offshore. Or did it not matter? Yes. Okay, she said it was time to get out of Dodge, protect ourselves. Was there anything that was said or done that was the final switch that made you? Mm-hmm. Mm. So you're really paying attention to the storm, and you know what? Got me? I have a friend of mine lives down by Fort Myers Beach, and he's retired from the Weather Service. And he put on social media that afternoon. He goes, "The surge is already worse than I think I underestimated this storm." And I saw that about 2 o'clock, and I was like, he's way down south. For him to say that, okay, there's something going on. Yes.
I was going to say, we evacuated 5 times in the past.
Mm-hmm.
Came
Mm-hmm.
down to Sunset Beach with nothing happening. I think looking at the cone, seeing that it, we thought would miss us, we thought we were okay. So we evacuated after we got TIPD Captain.
So yeah, the cone got you, didn't it? Yeah. Yeah. I was worried about that. Yes. Okay. The Sharpie, write the information was what got you to finally move. What could we do better in the future? What type of information did you feel that you didn't have, or that you were clamoring for, or you woke up the next morning and went, "Dang, I wish I'd known that." Yes. Mm-hmm. And he's saying that the wind, seeing more of the wind information, even though the center was way offshore, seeing the high wind information. And I think now we're starting to understand that the gusts are so important, because everything the Hurricane Center does is based on sustained winds, which is fine. But I think we're finding out now that those gusts are really important. So you're sustained at 60, which is a big deal, but you're gusting to 103. I think that that is a very big deal. And the other thing with that was the we just had Idalia, which was kind of yes. Mm-hmm.
But it's much wider than that.
The storm is not.
That was explained perhaps on TV, that this wide, or the winds reach out this far.
Mm-hmm.
That would have made a difference.
And I think there are things coming down the road that are kind of experimental now, which I think will do a much better job in the future. I've seen them. I can't talk about them, but I know they're out there and they're coming in the future. I think there'll be a much higher resolution look at that in the future instead of broad brushing everything. Yes, sir.
Personally, I think your information is excellent.
Oh, thank you.
But the problem is the lesson learned is when we're told to evacuate,
Mm-hmm.
evacuate.
When he says when we're told to evacuate, and they've always told us that 8 out of 10 evacuations are going to be unnecessary. So you were close. You're at 5. You're always going to have those that are unnecessary, but it's the 1 or the 2 out of 10 that come and get you. And so, you know, that happened to us. So, yes. Right. Mm. Mm. And damaged probably with a surge. Yeah, it's a lot that with that people didn't even think about, and you know, I think we've all learned things with the electric vehicles, things like that. We were at a conference with emergency management, and they said so many people's sheds caught on fire because they had lit in their tools, and the salt water got in, and all of a sudden you had shed fires all over the county. Who would have ever thought of that? So, you know, but there's all kinds of, you know, we're veterans now because we usually did these talks and we were like, well, a storm surge is going to look like this. Well, you guys know what the storm surge will do this. Well, you guys know now. But there's always a tendency to think, and I don't think anybody's going to be like this now because it's fresh in your mind. There's always a tendency in human nature to think what you've been through is the worst that can happen. And I think when we saw what could have happened a few weeks later with Milton, then we're like, this is magnitudes worse. Luckily, down to the south, we just got the north side of that. All right, yes. Welcome. Mm-hmm. That's after a hurricane probably 10 or 15 years ago hit the panhandle. They went up. Meteorologists love to do this. We love to go back later and do surveys and stuff and talk to people. And they found out the number one reason people didn't evacuate was their pets. So that's an issue. Yep. And people didn't know that. Yes. Yeah.
With the news about cuts in the National Weather Service, do you please tell us about the information that you're getting?
Well, I'm worried about the cuts. I mean, if you look at the Weather Service office in Ruskin, they've got tons of vacancies. I'm worried about it. I don't like it. We're all here for you. We're still getting the computer models. And the Hurricane Center has fully staffed. I'm worried about the weather balloons, and I'm worried about the budgets to fly recon, and if they will be able to fly those because we desperately need them. I'm extremely worried about research. That's the boring yawn stuff. But you know, these models that we have now that are so good, the track forecast, I used to come to these talks and say, don't pay any attention to the intensity forecast because it's garbage. You know what? The intensity forecast in the last decade has gotten much, much better. You know why? They did research. And they were able to better identify rapid intensification, and that made the intensity forecast incredible. It's from the researchers, and those are the ones that were really suffering with the cuts. So I'm concerned that in 5-10 years, we've seen great improvement. We've got great models now. They've come a long way. They all came from research. I'm afraid that we're like at the pinnacle because research is expensive, it's boring, and it takes time. And then you see the results operationally. So that's what I'm most worried about with the future. Lost some good people in NOAA. Lost some really good people. Yes. There's some new technology that they're kind of looking at that might do a better job with the weather balloons and things like that. But again, you got to have money, and there's no money for any of that. So but we've all been around a long time at Bay News 9, and so we'll be there for you, and we'll be looking at everything, and we're not going to say anything if we don't see it. And if you don't hear us talking about something, if you're seeing it on social media, like this thing in like 10, 15 days that people are jumping up and down about right now already, it's going to be a long season. If we're not talking about, that means it's nothing to worry about. Okay, we're not gonna hype it and make you jump up and down. Yes.
I'm not sure who this would be a question for, but we've gone to ABC liquor status at the store.
Uh huh.
Cut all the water out, and they have 12 inches of sewer water. Is there any way of keeping sewer water out of the
Ooh. Not for me. But Mr. Sewer.
Yep. Yeah. So, I think you just called me crappy, but that's okay. I can live with it. What happens is our stormwater and wastewater is tidal driven, right? So once those pipes get inundated with flood water from a surge, they can't carry the water out. We have wells, sanitary system wells at each of the lift stations throughout the island. But again, once they fill up with water, they're going to overflow. And that's why we tell you to evacuate, because there'll be plenty of electricity, water, and sewer, just not in the places you expect. They'll be in the street.
We had to evacuate a TV station on the other side of St. Pete for the potties. Okay, let's keep moving. I'm out of time. I appreciate you all coming tonight. You've been a great crowd. And if you ever need anything, mike.clay@charter.com, and let me know. And if you have any questions or anything, I would be happy to answer them. If you think about it later, let me know. And we'll turn it over to, I believe, emergency management is next.
If you can do it without, you can just hold it forward.
Oh, yeah, I'm not a.
Hello?
All right. So I'm not a microphone person. All right. Well, thank you for coming. Welcome. This is a really big event. You guys really have a good turnout. It's nice to see such a large turnout in one of our cities. I'm Renee Duffy from Pinellas County Emergency Management. I am their analyst. I am not a coordinator. I'm not a manager. So why is a analyst talking to you right now? Why'd they pull in a data scientist? And so I'll speak a little bit about that at the county. One of the great things about our county and our leadership is how data hungry they are, right? So whether it's our sheriff, whether it's our director, the lady you see on TV telling you to evacuate, she's really data hungry. They're all data hungry. They're using data and technology and the most current information and forecasts to make the decisions that are impacting our residents. So I'll talk a little bit about that in our talk. So what's the role of the county as far as emergency response and recovery as it relates to the city level, right? So Pinellas County is unique. Do you guys know how many municipalities we have in the county? How many think it is less than 10? We have 24 municipalities in our county. It's a lot. So a big part of our role as the county is coordination. So we're working with all of our city partners because they're the ones that are directly interfacing with you guys, right? They're the ones providing you with water, with law enforcement, with rescue services. So at the county, a lot of our activity, a lot of our work that we do, especially during Blue Sky, is to coordinate with our cities, with our municipal partners, and identify any kind of unmet needs that they may have and figure out a strategy to meet those unmet needs, right? So a lot of what we do is planning. We do a lot of training. So we provide training for our law enforcement, our first responders throughout the county. We do a lot of outreach events. How many of you guys have heard of our special needs registry? So I'm kind of I've been doing data stuff for about 20 years. I'm kind of new to emergency management. One of the things that blew my mind was the special needs registry program and how many resources we put into that as a county and how much each one of our cities puts into it. So we've got anywhere, it fluctuates between about 2,500 to 4,000 people in the county on our special needs registry. Now, that includes not only folks that may have special needs and need assistance to evacuate during an event, but it could also include anyone that just needs transportation to a shelter during an event too. So the county, we maintain this registry. There's easy ways to sign up online, and we coordinate with our fire departments to evacuate each and every single one of those people. We do a call down, we call them. If they still want to go to the shelter, we provide the pickup services for sometimes up to 4,000 people. It's amazing. It's really an incredible effort and a partnership effort with our cities. Again, a big part of what we do is community outreach. One of the reasons why we're here. This is our lifeblood, right? The more educated our residents are about the risks, about the hazards associated with living in a coastal community, the more educated you are, the more informed your decisions are going to be. So that's kind of our mission, why we put so much into our outreach efforts. And then Gray Sky. How many are signed up for our Alert Pinellas? You get a text message. Awesome. That's great. Awesome. So we run the Alert Pinellas program. We have the ability to send customized messaging. Sometimes those aren't necessarily due to storm events. We'll do messaging for like a boil water notice, for example, that kind of thing. We have that capability. The county also has the ability to send what we call a WEA, or a WEA, and that's our wide area alert system. So the really loud messages that you get that you can't turn on or off, and they can come kind of at inconvenient times. We don't try to do it at inconvenient times, but we're kind of coordinating that effort as well with the county. If you want the Alert Pinellas, so the Pinellas County Emergency Management specific ones, we can sign you up right back here after our talk. Yeah, good question. Damage assessment. It's affecting almost everybody that lives here, right? How many had their home assessed for damage? There's a lot of different assessment efforts that go on after a storm. One of the big programs that I get involved in is the preliminary damage assessment. So one of the things that we do as a county, we coordinate with our cities. We train over 300 people a year to go out and collect data. Those data we provide to the state and to FEMA, and they use that data directly to make decisions about whether or not we meet the threshold for assistance. So in my 20 years of doing data stuff, I've never come across a program where the data are so critically tied to providing benefit for residents. The sooner we get those data into the state, the sooner the wallet opens, so to speak. One of our big wins was after Idalia. So not every storm is going to be a big one, right? We have a lot of these in-betweener storms. I think those in-betweener storms are going to become a lot more common. And those tend to be, they can be a little bit more challenging as far as messaging, as far as making sure that people are getting the right information about the risks associated with those smaller storms. Our kind of challenge to make sure that we meet that assistance threshold for smaller storms is a little tougher too. And so as we kind of look forward, we're doing everything that we can to collect that information so we can get assistance to you guys as soon as possible. So after Idalia, we had like a 5-day turnaround for our data. Within about a week and a half, people were starting to get that $700 check from FEMA. So it is a really quick thing. It's a huge effort that the county and our city partners are involved with, and we're really proud of our damage assessment program for preliminary damage. Further down the road, it's a little different story for substantial damage. I'm not going to talk too much about substantial damage. We'll kind of stick to the emergency management stuff for today. But search and rescue, we get involved with it as well. So for Helene and Milton, we had one of the first, I don't think it was the first, but one of our first large-scale kind of experiences with having the state and federal USAR teams come out to provide assistance with search and rescue. How many folks encountered any of the search and rescue teams on the islands? You're outing yourself because you probably should have been evacuated. So if you were still here and you saw search and rescue, then we would have wanted you to probably evacuate. But yes, so we do help coordinate some of those search and rescue efforts. That's another amazing program. The state and federal partners, they assist us a lot in that. We also have our local fire departments and law enforcement out there as well, coordinating with them. All right, so back to data, which is my favorite thing. I like numbers. The decisions to go into whether or not we evacuate and when we evacuate and who we evacuate are very, very data driven. So what we're looking at thousands of model simulations, surge forecasts very specific to that storm. We're looking at the population of the people that could potentially be impacted. How many shelters are we going to open? I do a population analysis every year to look at, make sure that we have enough shelters based on how big our population is. Shelters are kind of hard to come by. They're not a dime a dozen. We are limited in our shelter number and capacity, so we're always trying to make sure that we have enough sheltering resources for our residents. And the when. So they call these clearance times. So evacuation clearance times, and they vary depending on the level of evacuation we're going to order. So if we're going to order more people to evacuate, we've got to make that decision earlier, right? The studies that go into these numbers are really cool too. So one of the things that they do, they track people's cell phones, or they did 5 years ago when they ran this analysis. They look at transportation data. How quickly or how long does it take people to get out of the county? We look at all that data, those trends, and that's where those numbers come from. So we try to figure out how many people are leaving, how long is it going to take them to get out safely. Other considerations into when and why we evacuate, we're looking at, we've got to close our schools, right? Most of our public shelters are schools. We can't use them as shelters if kiddos are in school, right? So there's a whole series of things that have to happen before you will even get that alert that we're going to evacuate. We've been thinking about evacuating you guys for days in advance. So by the time that you guys hear, okay, we got to evacuate, there's been a whole lot of number crunching and a whole lot of people in a room making sure that we're not over evacuating or under evacuating, right? Irma was a big kind of example of that. That storm was so huge. One of the things that we saw kind of behaviorally statewide is there were a lot of people that evacuated for that storm. Not only did they evacuate, but they went a really far distance. We had people leaving the state, right? So there were some lessons learned after Irma. One of them being, yes, evacuate, but you don't have to leave the county. If you can, the closer you can stay to your home, the better, right? If you can find a friend or family member or hotel within the county that's in a non-evacuation zone or that's on higher ground, that's your best bet, right? If you don't have anywhere to go, we do have a sheltering program. So the county, we're up to, I think we're down to 23 shelters this year. We don't open all of our shelters for each storm. It depends on the storm. So if we're only going to order an evacuation of Zone A, we open about 10 to 12 shelters. So one of the things that we've got in our hurricane guide are resources to figure out which shelters we do open. Because again, it varies depending on the size of the storm. Uh-huh. Yep. Yep. Mm-hmm. That's a great question. So we've got, this is our evacuation zone map. Hopefully everybody's seen it before. I'm kind of the person that does this. So I'm the one that draws all these colors on the map. Our parcel or our zones are based on parcels. So your neighbor could be in a different zone. It happens, right? Because we really want to fine tune those evacuation zones to make sure that we're only evacuating the people that are most at risk. So these white areas, those are going to be higher ground and they're in the non-evacuation zone. The red areas, those are zone A. The barrier islands are really easy to map. If you live on a barrier island, you're always going to be in zone A. So your home could be elevated. You could be on slightly higher ground. But if you're on a barrier island, you have a different set of risks, right? You're literally an island. So we want to make sure that we're evacuating those communities because of their evacuation kind of routing issues as well. All this, a lot of this text you can't read from where you are. It's more for effect. All this information are little pieces of the puzzle. All the things that we're looking at in order to make these decisions on, I mean, whether or not to evacuate and who to evacuate is our biggest decision I think we can make as far as communicating risk to the public. And then recovery. We are still in recovery, right? We are also planning for next season, so it's a busy time of year for us in emergency management. A lot of our recovery has to deal with getting different types of assistance and grant programs. A big part of our recovery efforts from last year have to do with housing. So trying to find affordable housing, trying to put people that were displaced into housing situations or options. So housing assistance is a big component of our recovery efforts right now. All right, so if we look at some numbers from 2024, one thing that I think is most interesting, so we talked about shelters, right? And how many people evacuated? It's not a lot, right? If we look at how many people were in the shelter, and I know they're kind of small, so I'll call them out for you. For Helene, 1,700 people were in our shelters. For Milton, do you think it went up or down? Up, a lot, way up, right? So we had 12,000 people. So it went from 1,700 to 12,000. Yep, in the back. These are including the special needs shelters. So it's the Red Cross, or the DOH ones too. But it's just the county general shelters and special needs shelters. Other items that I wanted to call out. Oh, okay. So one of the other things the county does too, we facilitate a lot of the requests for resources from the cities to the state. So how many of you guys saw water stations popping up, or bathrooms, porta potties, laundry facilities, drinking water, charging stations? All of those resources, the cities request through the county, and then we've got to request them through the state. So it's this big kind of coordinated process, and it works. It's craziness. We put in 700 mission requests to the state for both Helene and Milton. So it's wild. They're removing a lot of resources. That can include people. So a resource could include National Guard. So we ordered National Guard to come out and provide assistance. We had, you guys may have seen some substantial damage assistance resources that we had. All right, and again, more numbers. Like I said, I'm a numbers person. So this is our numbers for the whole storm, right? Not looking good. These are just Treasure Island. for both Helene and Milton. Fortunately for us, the impacts that we saw for Milton were about the reverse of Helene, right? So Milton hit us more as a wind storm, and we got a significant amount of rainfall. And so if you looked at the damage map from Helene and cut out the areas that did pretty well, they weren't impacted, those were the areas that were mostly impacted by Milton. So it was nice to not have the double whammy of impacts, but we did see kind of widespread between the two storms. And every storm is different, right? Not every storm is going to be a surge event. If that eye of Milton had nudged a little closer to us, we still probably would have seen that negative surge, right? But even more wind. So it's possible for us as a coastal community to just have a wind event. And those types of storms present different hazards and different risks. It changes the way that we run our response and recovery as well. Again, no two storms are the same. This is what the damages look like for Helene. Very concentrated in those low-lying coastal areas, and the damage map for Milton. So if you wanted to explore this data more, I've got it set up at my booth if you guys want to come visit me after the talks today. All right, what you can do. So that's why you guys are here, right? There's some talk about Facebook. Not everything in Facebook's the worst, right? So our communications folks, we've got about half a dozen of them on shift at any time working out of our EOC. They are doing a lot of outreach through social media. It's what people are looking at, right? So if you see any posts on Facebook that are branded by the county, it says Pinellas County government, those are legit messages, right? We always make sure that we're branding our message. It looks like really kind of bright blue to make sure that we're letting you guys know that this is qualified information and it's information that you can rely on. All right, and I will spend a little bit of time too talking about why people evacuate, incentives to evacuate, and you guys talked about this already too. So one of the things that they've done kind of behavioral studies on, what do you think is the number one thing that encourages people to evacuate? That can make the difference between going or staying? I heard family. Family. Family, friends, your community, your neighbor. I wasn't freaked out. I'd been locked up in our EOC doing crazy response and planning and making sure that we're prepared for the storm. It wasn't until I went home and I saw my neighbors had their windows boarded up. And I was like, oh wow, there's a storm coming. And that's all I'd been doing for days, right? It's the community. It's the people you live next to. It's your family. And so I'll leave you with this. I'll ask you all to be ambassadors for us, right? You're here. You're already vested, right? In a way, I'm kind of speaking to the choir, right? So it helps us, and I think it really makes a huge impact to kind of transfer that to you guys, right? You can be our message providers. Be the leaders within your community that people look to make decisions, right? 'Cause it's a really powerful thing if your family member, if your mom or your daughter, your son, aunt, uncle says you need to get out of there, right? Those are really powerful messaging tools that we have in our toolkit. So keep that in mind. People are looking up to the leaders within our community to make those decisions. And again, we've got lots of resources available for you. We've got our hurricane guides back there, links to all the phone numbers and stuff that were mentioned if you missed them. I actually pulled up some of the information on the re-entry permits. There's an online form that I found. So if you have any questions, if you want to fill out that form today, I can walk you through that so that you can get your re-entry permit. We've got information for you. Any questions as far as the county evacuations? That is a chief question. 15-year-old reentry permit?
Yeah, the city of Fair Island never issued them. It's a county program through the sheriff's office, so I am not certain. You have one there? Yeah, I wouldn't imagine there's an expiration on it. Does it look like that? Yeah, you should get that. Thank you. All right. Yes, ma'am. You mean for evacuating vehicles? I am not aware of that. Maybe something coordinated through the county or through the city of St. Petersburg, but, thank you. The question was, are parking garages opened up for evacuations to get vehicles higher? Generally, we recommend you get them off the island, and at that point, they don't need to go into a parking garage per se. But no, I have no information on that. That might be something one of the other municipalities or the counties doing. Yep.
Cool. Well, good evening. I'm the final act, so we'll be showing up, ending pretty soon, but 5-10 minutes of your time. What I'm going to talk about is like the timeline that led up to Helene and basically what the fire department's response was to Helene, and so you can understand what we are doing, what service we provide as a fire department, and what you should expect from us for storms and stuff like that. So my name is Deputy Chief Tom Brennan. I serve as the Operations Sections Chief during our storms here. There we go. So just to recap, everything I already talked about, but basically September 25th was a Wednesday. We basically knew we were being impacted by this storm. We had enough information out there telling us we will be impacted. What the impact was or will be, all the predictions were telling us a storm surge, and it happened. So September 26th, that Thursday, that was a long day for us in the fire department, preparing for the storm, getting ready for the storm. We called in all of our resources. I'll talk about that later as well. And of course, throughout the night Thursday, the storm hit, the surge hit, right? The surge. We never really had the storm. The storm was 100 miles offshore. The surge hit us. And then Friday, the next day was a very trying day for the fire department. We had so many rescue calls. We'll talk about that as well. So anyways, just to talk about this, the governor declared a state of emergency on the 23rd. And then Pinellas County declared a state of emergency on the 24th. And then Chief Bars met with staff, the city manager, the mayor, and we declared emergency on September the 25th. So this is the chief talking at that meeting on September 25th at 9 a.m. If you listen, I want you to listen to what the words the chief had to say to advise you guys on what you should be doing in preparing for the storm. And there's no audio. Hey, Brett. We practices checked it beforehand. Yeah. It's probably the TV. Where's the TV remote? It's probably the TV remote.
Takes out the cell towers and the phone lines. You may not be.
Brett's the best.
We're not going to physically remove anyone from the island, but there may very well come a point, and we're putting folks on notice that if the flooding gets bad enough, we may not be able to come provide 911 services to you. if the wind takes out the cell towers and the phone lines, you may not be able to reach 911. You know, in past storms, once the wind speed and the flooding reaches a certain amount, the 911 call takers will tell you, you know, thank you for calling. We'll put you on the list. As soon as it's safe to do so, we'll get to you. And then that could be hours. So we urge folks, you probably won't have electricity. You probably won't have, you know, there's potential you won't have pressurized water. Lift stations could overflow. You could have plenty of electricity, sewer, and water, but they're all going to be in the streets, not where you expect them. So, you know, with those dangers in mind, I would urge everyone to evacuate.
So the chief was spot on with that. His advice was exactly what you needed to follow. We had a period of about 9 hours where we could not respond to emergencies, and I'm going to cover that a little later on. So there's a 9-hour window that people call 911 and nobody's responding, and I'll explain why. So Noah, at 12:30 that same morning or afternoon, the chief spoke at 9 o'clock in the morning. This is about 12:30 that same day. Storm surge can be as high as 5 to 10 feet along the Pinellas beaches. And we definitely experienced that. I'm going to show you, I'm going to prove to you how much of a storm surge we received based on buoy data off the coast of Pinellas County. So again, here's the update at 1:30, same day from FDEM, Florida Department of Emergency Management. My point is, it's multiple resources telling you what's going to happen. They were all on the same page. We were all saying the same thing. There's a potential for a major storm surge along the Pinellas beaches. So trust the resource. Make sure it's a resource. I heard Mike Clay talk about it. Make sure you're using a good resource, not some wackadoodle, weather page out there. But make sure you're following a good resource. I want to talk about our assets in the Treasure Island Fire Department. So we have 15 people on shift. We have a fire chief, you have myself, deputy chief, and we have Mercedes, who's our public educator, right? So during a storm event, the chief is in charge of the city. He is our incident commander. He runs all of the city operations and is coordinating all the responses, the needs, and all that kind of stuff. My job is the fire and EMS response. I'm in charge of all that with the fire department side of it. And Mercedes is my deputy. She helps me out, keeps it organized, keeps track of the incidents, what's going on. So what we did for the storm is we called in everybody who was available. We had one person off on vacation, and it killed him not to be here. So with our staffing, we had 3 people on our fire engine. So we had 3 on our fire engine. Then we had 2 on a pumper, which is our backup fire engine. I should say we had 3 on that one. We had 2 on our rescue, 2 personnel there. We had 3 on our high water vehicle. You guys have seen this drive around town. I'll tell you, it's pretty impressive, but it's even more impressive when the storm surge is so big that can't go through the storm surge. And then our other vehicle, we have the light high water vehicle. It's 20 with 3 person on board. It's raised, I think it's a 6-inch raised F-150. So those are the resources that we have. At 9 o'clock the next day, this is where I need Brett again probably. See if I do this right. Oh, I'm doing it right so far. Nope, I did it wrong. Brett? Oh, it tried to pop up for a second. It popped up there. Where's it at? There it is. There we go. This is Pinellas County Emergency Management telling you the same thing.
Rain and flooding to our area today. We're already witnessing street flooding in Gulfport and areas of Shore Acres. We are under storm surge warning, tropical storm warning, hurricane watch, flood watch, and tornado watch. It's only going to get worse, folks. Tropical storm force winds are already starting to appear in our county, and they'll increase throughout the day. We anticipate those winds to be in our county for about 12 hours. That storm is just going to continue to grow, and even though it's offshore from us, we are going to have impacts here. Do not ignore the
storm surge warnings that we've been putting out. Be prepared for storm surge of 5 to 8 feet. That is enough to sweep your car.
So anyway, so she's saying the same message, Pinellas County Emergency Management. So we all say the same message. And when they're being that assertive about it, you got to take note. You have got to heed that evacuation notification. And then at 3:10 p.m., this is just a quote from, this is posted on Bay News 9. Again, the timeline is telling us a 4 to 7 foot above mean high tide. What does mean high tide? What does that mean? Does anybody know what that means? So the prediction is a 2 foot high tide. You got to add 4 to 7 feet above that 2 foot mark, right? So I'm going to show you guys this in a second. I think it's my next slide. Let's see if I got that right. There we go. Here we go. Here's our Johns Pass tide chart. You can't see this for September 26th, but down here at 11:44 p.m., I want you to mark that in your head. 11:44 p.m. is the high tide for us on Johns Pass. And it's almost a 2 foot high tide at 11:44 p.m., 2 feet. So if you have a storm surge between 4 to 7 feet, you're actually getting 6 to 9 feet. Okay? So think about that. Understand the tides. We want the storms to hit at low tide. You know, sometimes that happens, sometimes it doesn't. But we had a higher tide at 6:30 in the morning that morning. That was a 2.5 foot high tide. So thank goodness it didn't hit. I mean, it would have been worse. Another foot of water in our houses. So again, 11:44, the high tide was at. So this right here, this video was taken by one of our firefighters assigned to the apparatus. This is at 5:30. 5:30. That's 6 hours away from the high tide. That is 6 hours away from the high tide. And I learned something from Mike Clay, and I talked to him afterwards. He was talking about that massive, how early the storm surge came in. And he talked about the storms that were offshore that were moving 100 miles an hour. And he says this is why this is happening. I consider myself a weather geek, and if I live again, I'm going to go to meteorology school. But I couldn't understand why that was happening so early in the evening. But that's at 5:30 p.m. All right, this is when I show you this video. This is 5:50 p.m. All right, just 20 minutes later on. What I want you to do is pay attention. This is Sunset Beach. I want you to look between these two buildings and see how violent the waves are coming from the Gulf of Mexico at 5:50 p.m. So that's a significant amount of water coming through. And if you're watching, check out those waves back there. Check out those waves. So that was taking that water, pushing it hard from the Gulf of Mexico, running along Sunset Beach, and then exiting the intercoastal.
So at this point, if you haven't evacuated, stay in your home. Absolutely. We'll come get you afterwards.
So this is our high water vehicle that's out doing surveillance and giving us reports back what's going on. I actually showed this video to the chief, and I said, Chief, we're in for a long night. This is bad because it's only 5:50, and we still have 6 hours to high tide. This is not good. And to the chief's point, that vehicle did make some rescues on the way back out from Sunset Beach. They actually picked up people walking in the water, families walking in the water. This next video is just at 6 o'clock. This is heading back north on West Gulf Boulevard. Sunset Chateau is to the left. Those white vehicles, I guarantee they probably floated within an hour. But that's a lot of water. And again, that's 5 hours and 45 minutes before high tide. Yeah. That's a good point. So the bad part about this is that we started getting more 911 calls. We had 2 calls before 6 o'clock during the day. 2 911 calls before 6 o'clock. All right? So at 6:12, we had a structure fire report on Sunset Beach. Well, guess what? A fire truck couldn't go down there, the pumper couldn't go down there, and the rescue couldn't go down there. We had to send a high water vehicle and that souped up 4-wheel drive pickup truck we have to try to do the best we could for fighting a fire. There's limited resources on those vehicles. They're not made to be interior structure firefighting vehicles. At 6:15, the lieutenant on engine 24 called me and said, "Hey, Chief, we got to evacuate the island." I was like, "No, come on, really? It's only 6:15. We still got 5.5 hours of high tide." He goes, "No, Chief, the water is up to the fire station already." And we unfortunately damaged an engine back in Adelia, where we drove through high water and it cost like $40,000, $30,000 to repair. So we were making sure we were going to do that the second time. So we, at this time, at 6:15, we removed the engine, the pumper, and the rescue from the island, which includes the personnel. So we evacuated to the South Pasadena Church where our EOC is. At 7 p.m., the light height water vehicle, which is the pickup truck that's souped up with big tires and 6-inch lift on it, those guys reported, "Hey, Chief, we just went over the bridge and we started floating a little bit." We were like, "Oh, crap, sorry." So I said, "Hey, get off the island, come off the island." So they came off the island. So all we had left was that big old military vehicle we have, right? At 7:15, water started coming to the door of that vehicle. That means that water's getting too high. And if you understand mechanics and stuff like that, you're going to drown out the engine and you're going to strand that vehicle. And that's our vehicle. That's our main high water rescue vehicle. They had to come off the island at 7:15. High tide was not until 11:44 p.m. All right? So the bad part about that is we cannot respond. So if you're back on the island, the worst thing that can happen, that did happen, was people calling for help and having to call them back and tell them, "We cannot come. You have to save yourself." And trying to talk to an elderly female who's alone by herself is the worst feeling in the world. Yep. No. So this is the Clearwater Beach buoy. It's called is off Clearwater Beach. It almost mirrors our tides. It's off by maybe 5 minutes. All right, so I could watch what was happening. So the blue is what the tide is supposed to be. This is the predicted tide. The red is what the actual tide is. Over here, you probably can't see it, but the middle line is 5 feet. The top line is 10 foot. So this is 9 o'clock at night. This is midnight. So this is about 11:15. So we are just under a 10-foot storm surge, roughly about an 8-foot storm surge. So you take 8 feet plus the almost 2 foot of high tide, that's close to a 10-foot storm surge. So I will argue to this day that we had at least 8 feet of water on the roads of Treasure Island. We had a lot of water here. And unfortunately, a lot of people didn't evacuate, and we had a lot of rescues and calls and holding, which I'm going to talk about next. So from 6:15 to midnight, the night of the storm, the 26th, we, Treasure Island only, had 112 calls for rescue. Or it's high water rescues, house fires, pole fires, power lines down, or even medical emergencies. We could not respond. We cannot physically get our vehicles out here. We cannot help you. I'll back up a little bit. Our last rescue we tried to do is we took our jet ski, put the John boat in the back of it, towing it through the water and trying to get to Paradise for a rescue. The waves in Intercoastal were like 6 feet. It wasn't working. And we had to cancel that rescue. So, but the thing is, we had 112 calls for help that are sitting in the queue, and now Mercedes and I are making a plan for when we're going to go, when it's safe to go back out. When incident commander says, "Hey, it's time to go back out," we go back out and we set a priority on the areas. We actually created 5 teams, and each team got a certain section of the city, and we divided up that way to get these calls taken care of. Between midnight and 3 o'clock, we had another 18 calls, right? So now we're talking about 130 calls. So we had 130 calls waiting for our response. 14 people. No help from outside yet. 14 people, 5 apparatus. So after we went out to try to help as many people as we did, by the way, We got to all 130 by noon. We it kicked butt. That was pretty cool. But throughout the day, that day on the 27th, we got 162 additional calls for rescue. Most of that was people who stayed, and now they're realizing, I have no water, I have no electricity, I need to get out of here. So now we're taxing our resources. We still only have 5 units. We have an engine company coming from, I forget, Northport, somewhere south, that was assigned to us. They were going to ride the next day. We were on our own with, our 14 individuals. Another 162 calls we responded to on the 26th. Somebody talked about elevators earlier. I can't tell you how many rescues, because people stayed in their condos. Oh, we're going to be fine in our condo. We'll be safe up here. They don't think about post-storm. No sewer, no water, no electricity. And now we have to remove them from the 13th floor, 14th floor, 10th floor. All right, we have one stair chair that helps out with that stuff. It takes 3 people to do that. It takes a long time to get that task accomplished. So what I'm asking you to hear is that even if you're in a condo, you think you're going to be safe, but the sewer system shuts down, the water shuts down, and you need to get, help. There's no, you got heat, it's hot. So we had to come up with a makeshift, the following day we used the bus system. We created a bus system to evacuate personnel.
And I'll just tag in here, one thing that did not happen, thankfully, Chief mentioned the water system. Enough pipes were broken in Pinellas County to where we lost water pressure, any usable water pressure for firefighting out here for about 12 days post-storm. Certainly not enough pressure to pump water up to the 10th floor of a condo. So you're not going to have water. If you're in there and it catches fire, your sprinkler systems aren't going to work if it's still equipped. We can't get the water up that high. You are just out of luck. That's why we started to evacuate.
So real quick before my final question here, is that on any given year we run about 2,400 calls, Treasure Island, 2,400 calls. In a 5-day period, we ran 600 calls. Think about that, 1/4 of all of our calls in a short period of time. So my question to you, it's not a question for you to ask me. My question to you is, will you evacuate next time? I want to hear the answers. I want to hear yes. I want to hear yes. I want to hear yes. Who's the new person in green? How long you been here? Okay, so you were through the storms. So if you have friends or relatives or somebody, new neighbors, encourage them to evacuate. Hey, it's probably a good idea to evacuate. The best word is somebody who's experienced it before. And I'll add this at the end. I lived in Pinellas County my entire life. I'm 60 years old. I plan for the worst. Every time there's a storm coming in, I make quick arrangements to get my family out of here. Usually it's to Orlando, and then the storm turns and goes to Orlando. Yeah. That's happened more than once. It's pretty funny. But they're safer there. It's not going to be a water surge event there. All right, they're going to be safe there. They're going to be in a hotel. It's concrete block. They're good to go. Pet friendly. Got to bring out 3 dogs and all that kind of stuff. But what I found interesting was even here I didn't plan well enough. In my office at the fire station, I moved everything up about this high. I thought that'd be good. When I finally got to go to my office, I opened up my top desk drawer, salt water. I'm like, man, that was a lot of water in here. That's a lot of water. So, any questions that I can answer for you guys? Yes. Yes, we do. So the question is, like lithium-ion battery responses. So we had 25 responses. They were not all fires. They were concerned about being fires or potentially a fire. A lot were, hey, my electric vehicle is parked under my house. Okay, it's now destroyed. What can you do? What we did is that we took a chain, broke the window on the passenger side, broke the window on the driver's side, wrapped it, and pulled it out because it's a total dead loss anyway. So we were just pulling them out. We did have an event where we had multiple lithium-ion batteries that were submerged for hours. We had a couple fires. We had a couple car fires, golf cart fire, from lithium-ion batteries. So yes. Go ahead.
General safety point, you know, don't bring your powered scooter, lithium-ion bike or scooter, and set it next to the front door of your condo and plug it in the charge. That's your exercise.
Yeah, that's every day. Don't do that. Follow-up question? Okay. So we went to Pasadena Community Church. That's our EOC over there. It's a level C. For Milton, we had to leave that. We had to go to St. Midtown College over. So we do have plans and.
We've got a robust continuity of government plan that we put into place based on the situation. As you guys should all have plans based on the situation.
Your cars. Are you worried about where do you put your cars? That's what her question is. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, the first thing we do in the fire department once everybody gets to work for the storm that 26 in the morning when they all showed up, we got all their personal vehicles off the island. So none of our firefighters had their personal vehicles on the island.
The day before that, everybody got their families squared away.
Yep.
Went to North Carolina. Got a family there. Yeah, everybody, you take care of your business so you can come in and take care of the city. We have a plan.
Yes. Yeah, the question was, she had a friend who parked her vehicle in a neighbor's yard or neighbor's property, had a fire that caused damage to the house as well. Yeah, I don't have the expertise to answer how the insurance companies work on that thing. Yeah. Yeah, right there. So I'll add to that is that, be familiar with the policy. Call your insurance company. How people travel and rent cars, right? And how many times they want you to add insurance for this, insurance for that. Well, I know my insurance covers that. I don't need that extra stuff. So know your insurance policy. Understand what your insurance policies cover before you take action or whatever. Yes, sir. I do not know what happened to that. No. Yeah. 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 Any other questions? Yes.
One thing I haven't heard tonight is the storm is coming, with the tide factor, but also with the full moon. That's a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, but that slide I show you, the high tide will predict what it is with a full moon or the king moon. What's that called? King tide. Yeah, king tide. Chief, did you want to wrap this up or?
Yeah, I just have one last So thank you all for coming and for being serious about this. It means a lot to us to know that you guys take it seriously. And please spread the word, everything you've learned here. And I also want to say thank you to Mercedes Nelson Palmer in the back for putting all this together. This is her brainchild. So thanks, Mercedes. Please take time to walk around and talk to our experts. We got a lot of cupcakes and snacks. So if you don't eat them, we will. And those are shrinking already. So thanks again.